Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. I am back with another Halloween video. This one continues like my Froggy card series. So it's using some old lawn fawn, some new lawn fawn to put together this witchy little scene. So I am using the Purrfectly Wicked stamp set from Lawn Fawn. So I'm stamping out like the little cauldron. I'm going to stamp out the shelving and all the little knickknacks like the little potion bottles and stuff like that. I'm also stamping out some books for my little witches, a little spoon, just a whole bunch of accessories for my scene. I am also using the add-on stamp set, but you don't see me stamping that stuff, but I do color it off screen and use it. I am also using the Fangtastic Friends stamp set for the little spider dudes, the Totally Awesome stamp set for my little frogs. I'm using the big one and the little small one. And the Fox Costumes Before and After stamp set for a little broom and a tiny little witch hat. So both my frogs can have their little witch hats, and they can have a little broom and have all the things they need to be little witches. And I'm stamping everything on some white cardstock, and I'm using jet black Lawn Fawn ink, and I'm just going to be stamping that in my little stamping press so I get nice clean images. Now, the colors I ended up choosing were inspired by a certain pattern paper. It is from this like Halloween paper pack that's kind of pastel, and I typically don't use a pastel color palette when it comes to Halloween. I like a traditional Halloween color palette that's a little darker, but I decided why not try some pastels. It'll shake it up, make it a little different for me. So that is what I'm doing with these colors. Of course, pick whatever colors, whatever, pattern papers suit your fancy, whatever you have at home. But I wanted to challenge myself. So I'm using some YGs for my little frogs here. They're a little brighter, a little more vibrant. So I'm using YG06, YG05, YG03, and YG01. And I'm using the darker ones for my big frog and some lighter ones for my little frog. So they're a little different and they're not the same, just to add more interest. And as per usual, I'm going to be working from my darkest color to my lightest color. And then I'm going to go back and add some stippling to my little frogs when they're all dry, just to add texture and like some little spots to my little froggies, because I just think it really pulls them together. It makes them look really cute. For my purples, I'm using V15 and V12 Copic markers to color my images. So I'm using them to color the witch hats, making them purple just because I thought it'd be cute. And then I'm also using these colors to color my little cauldron, like the little bubbles that are going to come out of it. You can make the bubbles whatever color you want, but I thought purple would be kind of cool. And then I'm also using it to color some of the candies, as well as some of the little book spines, book covers, I guess. Just again to add variation, and I'm trying to go with a pastel theme, so I tried to go a little lighter with the purples I'm using. For my oranges, I'm using the YR family of the Copic line. So I'm using YR12, YR14, and YR15. And again, I'm just using them on a lot of the little knickknacks, I guess, that are going to be in my scenes. So I'm using them for some of the potions. I'm using them for some of the candies. I'm also using Y13, Y11, and Y02 for the yellows. And again, I'm coloring a lot of like the little potions, the little candies, the broom especially with the yellow. The buckles on my little witch hat here, and I'm going to be coloring or using like the oranges, the yellows, the greens, and the purples for this little stack of books here, but I go ahead and do that later. I was kind of confused and conflicted on what to color these books. I don't know why I struggle so much, but I just want so much variation, and it's hard to not have repeating colors and stuff. But yeah, I'm mostly using E31, E33, and E35 for the little bookshelves and other wooden parts. So like some of the corks on the bottles, the little handle on the broomstick, the little like stick for the lollipop, and stuff like that. And here I am using E30, which is a little lighter than all the other browns I was using, and I'm using that to color the little papers, I guess, of the books to make them look old and aged. And I'm using N5, N4, and N2 for my grays. I wanted to go a bit lighter with my grays instead of using blacks, and I'm using that to color the cauldron, the little strap on the witch hats, and my little spiders. Once my images are all colored, I'm going to cut them out using the corresponding dies and set them off to the side. Next, I'm going to take out that same paper that inspired this color palette, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it out using the stitched scalloped rectangle frame dies from Fawn. I felt like a scalloped edge would add some interest, and it's kind of frilly and cute and fits the color palette. I'm also going to cut out this little sliver of some brown cardstock. This will be the ground, and I'm cutting that out with the same scalloped die. And I'm just going to figure out how high I want my little floor to be for my frogs. I'm going to cut that out with my little paper trimmer here. Once I figure out how high I want it to go, I didn't want it taking up the whole card, but I still wanted some space to set my scene. Next, I am also taking this 1/4 inch strip of a darker brown cardstock, and I'm just going to take one of the stitched borders from the Stitched Borders die set from Fawn to add like a little stitching detail, and this will be like the floorboards of the floor, I guess, just to add more detail, to add like a little more interest. So I'm going to go ahead and mount my floor piece with the ATG gun right onto the pattern paper. And then I'm going to go ahead and mount the little floorboards, I guess, to the little division between the floor and the wall. Just, again, adding more interest and keeping it nice and clean. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim off the excess with a pair of scissors. Next, I am just taking all the images I had cut out earlier, and I'm just going to play around with what I want my scene to look like. So I know I wanted my frogs obviously on the ground. You could do a few on the shelves. I think that would be really cute. But I want my frogs, front and center with the cauldron, brewing whatever that they're doing, having a good time, being a little spooky, maybe getting into some mischief, you never know. And then I wanted my shelves up high, so it looks like, their little den, I guess, where they have all their spell books on shelves. They have some spiders around because maybe they just don't clean. And I know I wanted a whole bunch of books around. I wanted some candy scattered on the floor because, again, maybe they just don't clean a lot. I don't know. They're messy little frogs. And then I'm also stacking these books to make like a faux stool for my other little frog so he can kind of get access to the cauldron, so he can help out the big frog. So that is the kind of scene I wanted to have. I also am just setting up my little bottles here, overlapping them, adding some interest. I stamped out the frog's breath label onto the largest one because obviously I had to choose that because it's so fitting for the card, and it's so weird because like I guess these frogs are burping into jars and then using that in whatever witchcraft that they're doing. I don't know. But I felt like it was just too cute to not use. And yeah, that's the scene, and I'm just going to play around with what I like, and once I have that idea, I'm going to commit to it, and I'm going to start assembling some of these pieces. So I'm going to glue my little bubbles into my cauldron with liquid glue to make sure that they stay together. I'm also going to glue the little hats onto my little froggies. Next, I'm taking that big frog and I'm going to do a little surgery, I guess. So I'm going to take my scissors and cut around one of his arms, and then I'm going to add a little spoon in between so it looks like he's really holding it, and that he's like stirring his little cauldron and making whatever potions he's making. And I'm going to secure that little spoon into his arm with some liquid glue and let that dry. And here I am taking some of these books I had stamped out. Of course you could use them for anything, but I had the intention of making this stool. So I'm going to glue 3 of them on top of each other, doing my best to kind of line up the white edges with one another. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to stack my little frog on top of it. Instead of me stamping out 2 stools, I thought it would be kind of fun just to have a little stack of books. You know, they just have so many that they can use them for stools, and they just don't care if they get like their frog slime all over them or something. So that is what I'm doing. And next I'm going to take my grid mat and a little ruler. I would recommend like a T-square for this kind of thing, but I'm just using a ruler because that's what I had. So I'm lining up my panel as best as I can on my grid mat within the grid lines, and then I'm also lining up this little ruler with some of the grid lines, and this is going to help me get like a straight, you know, edge for my shelves. I don't want them looking a little wonky. I mean, you can, but I wanted them kind of straight and level. I'm also taking my little spider on a string. I forgot to glue him behind the shelves earlier like I wanted to do, so I'm just using my tweezers to kind of remove some of the shelf. I'm going to shove him underneath there and glue him down with some liquid glue, and then cut off the excess of the string when I'm happy with the length, I guess. So I'm going and I'm going to lay out all my elements again, just to figure out where I want them to be, how I like the spacing, how far I want my frogs to be from the cauldron, stuff like that. And then once I'm happy with how everything is laid out, I'm going to go ahead and glue my frogs and the cauldron down using these thinner black foam squares just to add dimension and add interest to my card. They're also, I guess, what would be like the foreground of the card, so that I also thought, you know, adding these foam squares and popping them up would kind of give that effect. So that is what I'm doing. yeah, for the rest of the card, I'm just gluing down these elements I had cut and colored earlier with both liquid glue and then sometimes some of these thinner foam squares just to pop things up. The majority of the things I have on the shelves, like these bottles here, I'm using some foam squares, again, just adding dimension, making them stand out because, hey, the bottles are really cool. You know, there's frog's breath on the shelves, that's pretty cool. And then I'm just gluing things to flat with liquid glue, like, you know, the broom, I'm tucking it behind the stack of books, trying to add dimension and stuff like that. So, yeah. And I felt like the center of my card was still missing something, so I'm taking some of this iridescent vellum from Fawn, and I'm just going to use a little bit of this anti-static powder tool on it because I'm going to be heat embossing on it, so I don't want anything sticking because it's static. So I'm taking this little sparkle stamp set, I guess, or stamp from the Purrfectly Wicked stamp set. It's like a little poof, I guess, like something's happening in the cauldron, so I decided to add that to my card. So I'm just going to be inking that up with some of this clear ink from Simon Says Stamp. It's going to be sticky so that my embossing powder will stick to it. So I'm going to be using some of the Fawn Unicorn Sparkle embossing powder. It's white, but it still has some glitters in it, so I felt like it'd be very fun to use, and I'm pretty sure it's a new one. I'm going to be heat setting that with my heat gun. I'm going to cut that out with the corresponding die and glue that on my card. To assemble my card, I cut out just this lavender card base. It's just a regular 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base, and I'm adding this gray paper on top of it. You don't see too much of it, but it won't clash with much of the card anyways. So that is what I'm doing. I'm mounting the gray paper on there with the ATG gun, and then I'm going to be adding my main panel that I worked on with some foam tape. Again, more dimension, more interest, and it just looks really cool. So that is what I'm doing. Because the front of my card is so busy, I wanted to add the sentiment on the inside, so I'm Frankensteining some of the words together to get what I want. So I'm taking the Totally Awesome stamp set and the Purrfectly Wicked stamp set, and I'm using sentiments from both of them to get, you know, what I want to be on the inside. So it reads, I hope your Halloween is totally awesome, because it's a Halloween card, it's got frogs on it, I thought it was cute. So I'm just going to stagger my sentiments so that they're a little wonky. I don't have to make sure that they're nice and straight, and it's going to be kind of spooky. And then I'm stamping it out using some of this sugarplum ink from Fawn, so it's kind of tone on tone, and it's just a really pretty purple. So now I'm just putting on, you know, the finishing touches to this card. So I'm using some of these lavender gems. So I'm just going to be adding those onto the card base so that they kind of look like little bubbles and little sparkles that are going on because of whatever they're brewing, you know. I thought that'd be kind of cool. So I'm adding an odd amount because odd numbers look better, and I'm gluing these gems down using the Fawn liquid glue and a little gem picker upper to kind of help with the process. And finally, I'm adding some of this clear glaze onto the bubbles of my cauldron just to add some three-dimensionality to my little cauldron here. And that finishes off the card. So thank you so much for watching. If you want to, feel free to subscribe, comment, share. It all means so much to me and the channel. I also have an Instagram down below if you want to follow me there. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.